You've reached the end of your relevance, Evelyn. That's what Alex Branner, the freshly imported CTO with a jawline sharper than his tech skills, told me on a Tuesday. Not in those exact words, of course. No, his version came packaged in a chirpy company culture meeting, where he pitched my 3 years of code as legacy scaffolding, right before pitching himself as the savior who streamlined the stack. Meanwhile, my code, silently running the backbone of a $50 million launch, humming along like a Rolls-Royce engine while he revved like a stolen scooter. Let me back up. The day started with a sunrise no one else saw because no one else was still in the damn building at 5:42 a.m. Except me, same as always. Evelyn Winters, senior systems engineer, ghost in the server room. Woman who wrote 92% of Atlas. Platform Branner now strutted around with like a peacock wearing a python's skin. I wasn't mad then. Just tired. Tired in the way that seeps into your bones and makes your coffee taste like regret. I wasn't sleeping much. Atlas was launching in 26 days, and I hadn't just written the code, I nursed it, debugged it, secured it, even patched the dependencies some hotshot forgot to update back in 21. I was the firewall, the lifeline, the architect. So imagine how it felt hearing my name completely omitted from the internal deck Alex shared with investors, calling Atlas our team's breakthrough, complete with his initials in the footer like he hand-stitched it in his garage with a soldering iron and dreams. Still, I smiled. Quiet pride, sure. But something colder too. That morning, buried under budget reports and 2 Red Bulls, I got a renewal notice from my licensing platform, the same one I'd used 3 years ago to formally contribute my IP to the project under a very specific condition. Any commercial use is void upon my termination without cause. It was an insurance policy I never thought I'd cash. So I opened the document, updated the renewal date, added a minor clause referencing the new dependencies I'd finished integrating last week, and re-signed. No fireworks, no dramatic music, just a few keystrokes, a timestamp, and a whisper to myself. Just in case, Evie. Oh, and while you're here, quick side note from the quiet coder behind 17 million lines of functional logic. 97% of you are listening without subscribing. Which is wild, honestly. Subscribing takes 2 seconds, but it fuels stories like this, helps our team stay caffeinated, and ensures jerks like Alex don't get the last word. Thanks, back to the carnage. Alex's new management strategy wasn't subtle. It was subtraction. One by one, engineers I mentored were reassigned, pulled into Tiger teams with names like Agility Pod and Growth Velocity Unit, which, spoiler, didn't grow jack. I wasn't invited to roadmap calls. My comments in the repo were overwritten with vague edits tagged Branner Review. The man had the subtlety of a chainsaw performing heart surgery. He cornered me in the micro kitchen a few days later, holding a protein bar like it was a baton of authority. Evie, he said, all fake casual, I think it's time we think more like product people. Less like, code monks, speed matters now, I smiled. Speed without integrity is just a fast way to fail. He didn't like that. His jaw twitched, probably trying to load a snappy comeback from his internal buzzword database. That evening, I looped in an old friend from legal, quiet chat over encrypted signal. Just hypotheticals. Hey, I said, if a contributor agreement includes conditional termination clauses tied to licensing, and the company ignores that, what's the exposure? Her answer came back in one line: if they fire you without cause and still use the code, they're dead in the water. I didn't reply. Just stared out the window, past the parking lot filled with leased Teslas and startup swagger, and thought, he'll do it. He really thinks he can steal it all and call it strategy. So I went back to my desk, updated the changelog, committed one last patch under my namespace, logged the hash into my private records, and waited. 2 days after the roadmap meeting I was mysteriously uninvited from, I walked past conference room C and heard my name being used like a cautionary tale. She's great, Alex was saying, voice oozing that faux casual leadership tone he must have picked up from some podcast for sociopaths, but we have to shift away from dependency on legacy thinking. Atlas needs velocity. She's stable code, but we're building rockets now. Stable code. I built Atlas from scratch. I didn't inherit it. I conjured it from 3 whiteboards and a caffeine Roman 4 drip while he was still over at Xylo spinning up his next buzzword. But sure, call it legacy. Because to men like Alex, anything they didn't invent is either disposable or theirs to rebrand. That same day, I noticed I no longer had access to the analytics dashboard. No Slack thread, no email, not even a polite looping you out. Just poof, vanished like I was an intern who wandered into the wrong repo. My permissions began shrinking like a wool sweater in the wrong wash cycle. Features I architected were now labeled Branner MVP in Jira. The new devs, fresh hires from Alex's old firm, started refactoring my modules without looping me in. One even asked me to explain how Evelyn's version handled API throttling, as if I wasn't Evelyn herself. I gave him the answer, in binary. Took him half a day to decode it. I could feel the walls closing in. It was death by 1,000 microaggressions, pull request rejections without justification, scheduled meetings where my calendar mysteriously never synced. Then, one afternoon, my Slack profile photo was changed to a generic gray silhouette. No one admitted to it. Just weird glitch, they said. Sure, a glitch. Like your wedding ring accidentally falling off during your coworker's bachelorette party in Vegas. At Friday's All Hands, Alex stood in front of the entire engineering org and said, Atlas is now fully integrated into our product pipeline. All components are officially company property. He emphasized it. Company property, with a little glance toward me like a magician daring the audience to challenge the trick. Someone clapped, someone else nodded. I just stared, silent, feeling the concrete of my own grave being poured with every smug syllable. But the thing is, I'd already seen this coming. I wasn't confused anymore. I was calculating. That night, I texted Lee from legal again. We hadn't talked since that signal message, but I kept the chat window open. Like a finger on a trigger. They're calling the code company property in public now. I think he's teeing up termination. What happens if they terminate me without invoking the clause? She replied 2 minutes later, then they're violating your license. You don't need to do anything. The contract is self-executing. And if they claim it will, just restructure me out, her, still counts. Especially if they continue using your modules commercially. Then came the kicker. Did he ever read the contributor license? I stared at the message for a long time. Then just replied, would it matter if he did? Because that's the secret, isn't it? People like Alex don't read. They perform intelligence like it's improv. Skim the abstract, bluff the rest, and legal fine print to him, that's just footnote filler in someone else's job description. So I smirked. Not because I wanted revenge, not yet, but because I saw the trap he was building. And I realized I'd already wired the floor beneath it. By Monday, I was pulled from the launch QA list. By Wednesday, my badge scanned red at the executive elevators. By Friday, there were whispers I was burned out, that maybe I needed space to rest and realign. And by then, I wasn't hurt anymore. I was ready. It landed on my calendar with all the grace of a guillotine. Quarterly performance sync mandatory HR plus CTO. No agenda. No context. Just a 10 o'clock a.m. invite from a woman I'd never met and a man I'd grown to loathe. I showed up 5 minutes early because old habits die hard. The HR rep, Melissa or Melanie or some other perky HR laminate, was already seated, her laptop open, fingers twitching like she'd rather be anywhere else. Alex strolled in 2 minutes late, black coffee in hand, no coaster. He didn't sit. He hovered. Evelyn, he began, like we were co-hosts of a cooking show instead of this corporate firing squad. I'll keep it short. We're realigning ahead of launch. Investors want lean, focused, agile. Melissa nodded like a bobblehead in a panic room. She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a one-pager, already signed, already dated, already everything. No misconduct, no performance flags, no warnings. Just a euphemism in bold font, restructured due to organizational priorities. That was it. 3 years, 3 million lines of code. One sentence and a template NDA with a severance clause that looked generous if you didn't know how much the software was about to make. Alex extended his hand like a man offering peace after a bar fight he started. No hard feelings, right? The train's moving with or without you. I looked at that hand. So soft. Never seen a day of real debugging, let alone a rollback crisis at 2 a.m. on a Sunday. I shook it. Of course, I said, wouldn't want to slow the train down. Melissa exhaled in visible relief like she was expecting tears or a table flip, but I just signed the papers, slid them back, and walked out. No drama, no threats, just a quiet smile. But here's the thing, you don't scream when the trigger is already pulled. You let gravity do its work. That night, at 11:17 p.m., I logged into my private Proton Mail account, drafted a simple email to legal@company name. ComCC, compliance at CTO at subject, license breach notification attachments, contributor agreement Winters signed PDF, module ownership map CSV, change log final MD in the body. I wrote exactly 3 sentences. As per the terms of my contributor agreement, Section 4B, Subclause Roman 2, commercial usage of any licensed modules is void upon my termination without cause. The agreement remains in full effect and was most recently renewed on date. Continued deployment constitutes unlicensed use. I scheduled it for automatic send at 12:01 a.m. the day my severance cleared, not a moment sooner. Because when you build a machine like Atlas, you don't just engineer the engine. You build the kill switch. You bury it where only the architect can reach it. As the file queued, I leaned back in my chair. Outside, the city flickered with the usual lies, neon lights promising things that never arrive. Inside, I shut the lid of my laptop and finally slept. Not because I was tired, because the reckoning was already en route, traveling at the exact speed of cause and effect. The launch went live at 9 o'clock a.m. sharp on a Monday, or at least, that's what the press release said. Alex appeared on Bloomberg Tech's morning segment, grinning like he'd coded Atlas with his own bare hands, dropping words like revolutionary and market-defining between gulps of lukewarm media praise. He wore one of those shirts with a tiny startup logo stitched into the collar, custom-tailored confidence for a man built on other people's labor. We're proud to debut a fully modular, cloud-native infrastructure for real-time logistics, he said, like a parrot that swallowed a white paper. No mention of me, not a whisper. Just slide decks full of synergy, velocity, and the obligatory pie chart with more slices than budget line items. I didn't watch the stream live. I was sipping matcha from a chipped mug, wrapped in an old hoodie that still smelled faintly of midnight debugging sessions. My phone buzzed with notifications, mostly old coworkers, most of whom had gone quiet after my exit. I didn't open the texts, not yet. Instead, I opened LinkedIn. My profile had been dormant for months, just a placeholder with my job title and an avatar that looked slightly haunted. But today, I made one small update. Evelyn Winters currently consulting contact for license verification and compliance inquiries. That was it. No resume recap. No self-congratulatory pivot. Just a landmine buried under a whisper. The kind of message that gets forwarded quietly between legal teams. Within an hour, the view count on my profile spiked. 10, then 30, then 87. Mostly people with titles like General Counsel, Procurement Lead, and VP of Strategic Risk. By noon, I received a ping from a friend still inside the company. No words, just a screenshot. It was a Slack thread from the engineering channel. Anyone know why the API auth gateway is returning license expired errors? The image cut off there, but I didn't need the rest. They had launched Atlas without revalidating the underlying contributor licenses. Because why would they? It was company property, remember? Alex said so on stage, loudly. Problem is, code doesn't care about posturing. Code runs on truth. The first bug reports started trickling in that afternoon. Minor at first. Features that worked in staging suddenly breaking in production. Authentication tokens invalid. Logs overflowing with module access denied errors. Third-party integrations timing out. No one connected the dots yet, but I knew the exact spot they'd missed. In my final push before being restructured, I'd updated all Atlas's core modules to include conditional verification against a private compliance service, one that pinged a licensing hash match to my employment status. If I was active, green light. If I was out, red light. Everywhere. It wasn't sabotage. It was just logic. Cold, unbiased, automated. By 3:30 p.m., someone had rebooted the core container stack 3 times. The errors didn't stop. Alex, in his infinite charisma, dismissed it in a company-wide email as expected hiccups in our scaling sequence. He called it a testament to the team's resilience. Meanwhile, at legal at company name. Calm, an unread message sat timestamped from 12:01 a.m., subject line still glowing, license breach notification, but it wouldn't stay unread for long. Not once the first paying client threatened to pull out over functionality gaps. Not once their internal team realized they couldn't legally deploy patches to modules they no longer had a license for. I didn't celebrate. This wasn't joy, it was gravity. And gravity, once in motion, doesn't stop until everything that's unmoored finally hits the ground. The email didn't explode. It spread, slow and viral, like mold in the drywall. Legal finally opened it Tuesday morning at 9:06 a.m. I know because my lawyer's automated read receipt pinged. 30 seconds later, the general counsel forwarded it to 5 departments with the subject line, Urgent Possible License Liability. Inside the message, my lawyer had attached everything. My signed contributor agreement, the licensing logs, timestamps of my termination, the compliance clause in plain legal English, and a final statement that made even the greediest CFO sweat. Per Section 4B of the Active License Agreement, your commercial usage of Atlas's proprietary modules is currently in breach. This breach affects all live deployments and constitutes material liability for continued use. By 9:21 a.m., the head of compliance canceled their 10 a.m. all-hands and called a fire drill instead. Not the kind where you evacuate a building, the kind where you try to put one out and realize the water lines are dry. The product team was told to freeze all rollouts immediately. No new installs, no patches, no integrations. By 11 o'clock a.m., 3 customer success managers reported that major clients, big, ugly, legally well-armed ones, were experiencing outages. Some tried restarting services. Some tried rerouting modules. One VP at a shipping conglomerate allegedly screamed, "If we don't get tracking restored by tonight, we're going to federal court." And what did Alex do? He smirked. "I've seen this move before," he said in a strategy sync, according to a Slack leak I got from a sympathetic QA analyst. "She's bluffing. Contributor agreements don't hold up in commercial court. We own the product." He even used air quotes. Own. Then he told legal to sit tight and directed the engineering team to patch around her stuff. Like you could just duct tape over a bomb mid-detonation. The problem is it wasn't just my stuff, it was everything. Authentication? Mine. Scheduling engine? Mine. Elastic load balancer logic? Mine. I'd written the skeleton and the muscle. They'd fired me thinking they were just trimming fat. They didn't realize they'd gutted the system's spine. At 2:42 p.m., my attorney received the first response from their side, a jittery, half-composed reply asking if we might find a resolution without further escalation. She didn't respond. We weren't negotiating because the clause was already live. The breach was already active. And the enforcement mechanism? That wasn't legal, it was logical. We didn't need a court order when the software refused to boot itself. By 5 o'clock p.m., The board had been alerted, not because Alex told them, because 3 of their enterprise clients had sent demand letters directly to the board inbox, alleging they'd been sold defective software in violation of licensing law. The phrasing in one stood out: "If you knowingly sold us an unlicensed product, we will pursue damages, not discounts." That's when things got quiet. Internally, they stopped tagging Alex in bug channels, stopped inviting him to stand-ups. Engineering went dark. PR issued a vague infrastructure instability tweet that fooled no one. Customers started pulling contracts for review. And me, I was gone, not ghosted, unreachable. My phone stayed off. My email signature had changed to a one-liner: Evelyn Winters, independent consultant, currently not accepting new clients, because I wasn't taking meetings. I wasn't answering questions. I was watching, from a distance, calm as a surgeon who knows the patient's already bled too much to be saved. No threats, no gloating, just silence. The kind that fills a vacuum right before a system fails. The first message came at 8:14 a.m. from an anonymous Proton Mail account with the subject line, "Urgent License Verification Request." The body read like a confession: "I'm a solutions architect for one of your former clients. We've been told everything's fine on the legal end, but our compliance officer found a license string that expired 2 days after your termination. Can you confirm whether our usage is still legally protected? Off the record, we're being told not to ask questions. Thank you." I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another message. This one from a junior dev at the company itself. "Are rewriting modules, Evelyn, badly. We've had to roll back 3 updates in 24 hours. They won't tell us why you were let go, but now compliance is walking around like it's DEFCON 2 and someone from the board asked for your Git history. Just tell me, did you see this coming?" That one I read twice. Because yes, I saw it, I didn't wish for it. I didn't trigger it out of spite, but I didn't stop it either. I just let the truth do what it always does in a room full of liars: echo. By noon, someone leaked the licensing clause. It hit the inbox of a freelance journalist at Tech Bulletin, one of those writers who lives for taking down unicorns. She reached out to my lawyer for confirmation. We gave her the original signed agreement, the updated timestamp, and 1 sentence for attribution. The code was used without an active license. The termination triggered a contractual breach. Enforcement was automatic. By 4:00 p.m., the article was live. $50M launch violates licensing agreement. Legal experts say recall is inevitable. It went viral in under an hour. Screenshots flooded LinkedIn. Twitter lit up like an oil fire. The subheading didn't hold back. Sources confirm a single contributor's licensing clause, tied to employment status, now jeopardizes full deployment of the flagship Atlas platform. Internal legal teams scrambling. Board intervention imminent. By 5:12 p.m., Alex was yanked out of a press prep call and summoned to an emergency board meeting. I heard this from someone who sat outside the room. She described it like watching a magician get caught with wires and magnets after swearing it was all skill. The board grilled him on when he knew about the license clause, on why legal hadn't flagged it, on why no one had verified compliance before rolling to production. His answer? Evelyn was a contributor, not an owner. We thought the clause was symbolic, as if a legally binding contract with a kill switch buried inside it was just emotional subtext. The board didn't buy it. They hired an external legal team that evening. Big name firm. The kind with a name that sounds like a threat. They were tasked with evaluating exposure and options. But the clock had already ticked past option. The product was live, the clients were pissed, and the media storm was already tearing through their NDA armor like tissue paper. And me? I was watching a thunderstorm from my apartment window, barefoot and calm, phone on Do Not Disturb. The article was trending on Hacker News. A Reddit thread titled "Girlboss Dev Shuts Down $50M Platform with Single Clause" had over 6,000 upvotes. They didn't know my name, but they knew the move, and they respected it. I didn't smile. This wasn't about applause. This was about correction. The kind of correction that makes future CTOs pause before saying we own your work now. Because somewhere out there, the next Evelyn was watching this unfold, and now she knew exactly what to do. By Thursday morning, the phone systems at headquarters were jammed, not with sales but subpoenas. It started when a logistics firm in Texas reported to the Department of Commerce that the software running their shipping nodes had ceased core functionality without warning. Their compliance lead, sharp as glass and twice as fast, flagged the code as potentially unlicensed for commercial transit infrastructure. That phrase? Pure napalm. The department moved quickly. Too quickly for Alex. At 10:42 a.m., a formal inquiry landed in the company's legal inbox. Your platform, Atlas, is currently deployed across multiple state lines. Please provide proof of current active licenses for all underlying software modules. They couldn't because I wasn't employed, because they never read the license, and because now they were operating with software that violated federal compliance, an unlicensed engine driving real-time freight, government logistics contracts, and reportedly one military subcontractor's internal parts catalog. Oops. By mid-afternoon, 5 enterprise clients had initiated returns or halted implementation. Two called the product a security risk. One CEO, according to another internal leak, told the board, "You sold me a Ferrari and forgot to mention the engine belongs to someone else." Investors were next. First came emails demanding clarification and legal notices. Then the true death knell, a shareholder lawsuit alleging willful misrepresentation of product readiness and licensing integrity. They were seeking damages, class action style, bundled with three smaller VC funds that had all poured money in after the launch PR. The stock, for whatever it was worth in private markets, flatlined like a dead monitor. That night, I received an email from a recruiter I vaguely remembered from back in my junior dev days. She was now director of talent relations at a firm whose name had recently shown up in the news because they were quietly eating my old company's market share. Subject line: confidential outreach regarding consulting engagement. The email itself was short. "Evelyn, your name came up several times today. Would you be open to a discreet conversation about helping us stabilize a competing product in light of recent events? Flexible terms. No politics. Just respect, let me know." But that wasn't the only offer that came in. At 6:03 p.m., a message from the company's interim legal counsel hit my inbox, CCing the CTO, CEO, and the head of compliance, now a man I didn't recognize. It was desperate, dry, and reeking of corporate cologne. "Evelyn, we understand there have been complications stemming from your prior contributions to Atlas. Would like to formally invite you to return in a temporary capacity to assist in resolving licensing compliance and technical stabilization. We are prepared to offer full consulting rates and indemnity. Your discretion would be appreciated." I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it, not out of spite, not to be cruel, but because I was no longer angry. Anger implies hope. Hope that people might do better next time. Hope that the system learns. I didn't believe that anymore. I was just done. Later that evening, news broke internally that Alex had been suspended pending investigation. The phrasing was careful, but the tone was unmistakable. Someone on the board had flipped. His Slack access was revoked, his badge disabled. His LinkedIn updated the next day to open to work. They say people don't fall from grace, they plummet. And when they do, the silence afterward isn't peace. It's the sound of everyone pretending they never knew him. The office I work from now didn't have glass walls or espresso taps or agile buzzword wallpaper. Just a narrow brick studio above a bookstore, 2 blocks from a cafe that knew how to spell my name right on a cup. The chair didn't creak. The Wi-Fi never dropped. And for the first time in 3 years, the code I wrote bore my name officially. I'd taken the consulting gig, not for revenge, not even for the money, just to build something clean, quiet, ethical, a logistics optimization suite built from the bones of hard-won experience, not stolen labor. My terms were simple: ownership of my modules, full license control, and no corporate interference with my dev cycles. They agreed, quickly. In week 2, I named the product Hestia, goddess of the hearth. Not flashy, not hungry, just foundational, reliable, warm. We pushed our first beta into closed testing by the end of the month. Clients, some of them once fiercely loyal to my old employer, signed NDAs with actual eagerness. Word had spread, the clause, the fallout, the silence after the blast. And then the message arrived, from a former QA lead at the company. Just 2 words, no subject line, it's pulled. I checked, quietly. No press release. No grand apology, just a soft, unannounced retraction of the Atlas platform from their product page. Support pages deleted. Documentation removed. Installer downloads now returned 404 errors. The ghost had been exorcised. They couldn't fix it, so they buried it. Days later, the CEO stepped down to explore new opportunities, which in exec speak is code for the board cornered me, and I jumped before the flames reached my loafers. Alex, gone. LinkedIn scrubbed. Twitter deactivated. Company bio erased. It was like he never existed except for the rumors, that he was consulting overseas, that he'd pivoted into AI ethics, the irony, that he was now taking time to reset. Maybe he joined a commune. Maybe he's just hiding in shame, doesn't matter. I wasn't chasing ghosts anymore. A few weeks later, an envelope arrived. Cream-colored, thick paper, no return address. Inside, a check. Final royalty payment from a patent I'd registered during my early days with them. Before Atlas, before Branner, before the clause. It wasn't life-changing money. But it was a full circle. I deposited it. Then sent the entire amount, down to the penny, to a nonprofit that mentors high school girls in STEM, especially the ones told they're too quiet to lead or not assertive enough to code. The only note I included read, "Let them write their own licenses." I didn't frame the check, didn't brag. I just went back to work, because catharsis doesn't always come with thunder. Sometimes it looks like clean commits, empty inboxes, watching your world shrink back to something you can hold in both hands. I wasn't fighting anymore. I didn't need to, the war was over, and I'd already rewritten the rules. The sun was barely up, leaking soft gold through the slats of my window. The only sounds in my apartment were the soft clinks of terracotta and the low hum of a humidifier. I was watering my succulents, 7 of them now, each named after a programming language I no longer had to pretend to enjoy. Perl was looking a little dry, Java thriving like it always does when no one's paying attention. I misted them gently, one hand cradling the pot like a wine glass, the other holding a mug of tea still too hot to drink. My phone sat face down on the kitchen counter, deliberately ignored. I'd taken to leaving it that way in the mornings. No alerts, no noise, but it buzzed anyway, once, then again, then a third time in rapid succession. I ignored it for a moment longer, finished repotting Python into a new ceramic basin. Then I picked it up. 3 messages, 2 were from former coworkers, the kind who only text you when the sky falls. But it was the third that made me pause. Push notification. Breaking news, company issues total recall of flagship Atlas platform due to invalid licensing, $50 million loss and counting. I tapped into the article, scrolled past the headline photo, stock image of a data center in grayscale. Halfway down the page, a quote from their new interim CTO. We underestimated one line of code and the woman who wrote it. It didn't feel triumphant, just inevitable. They'd waited too long. Thought silence was survival. Thought they could duct tape a plane mid-flight and call it agile. Thought I was just another replaceable part. Turns out I wasn't a part, I was the lock, and they'd thrown away the key when they handed me that severance packet. I stared at the quote for a moment longer, then closed the browser. No screenshot, no smug post, no call to anyone. Instead, I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, navigated to a folder buried 4 directories deep. Contingency/inside, my final licensing record. Timestamped, compliant, perfectly intact. I didn't open it, just highlighted the folder. Right-clicked, compressed to a zip. Then I clicked the option that made me smile more than any revenge fantasy ever could, archive, because I didn't need it anymore. I'd already built the proof, already let the silence do the shouting, already shown the world what happens when the wrong people think they own the right mind. I closed the lid, took a sip of my tea, and whispered, almost laughing, he thought he was firing a developer. Turns out, he just shut down his own product. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the coffee pot strikes again.